let's be completely honest with ourselves. There is absolutely no week that goes by anymore without us getting some of the most electric and deeply motivating news coming straight out of the Alliance of the Sahel States region. And right now, as we speak, the geopolitical architecture that the Western metropolitan power spent over half a century constructing to police the global south is physically cracking in half. And the speed at which this structural divorce is happening has left the entire establishment in a state of utter panic. Just last week, the transitional government of Niger, operating under the uncompromising and fearless leadership of General Abdourahamane Tchiani, looked across the Mediterranean, caught the eye of the International Criminal Court in The Hague, and casually told them, goodbye. We are permanently done with you. Do not ever look for us again. But if you thought that it was just an isolated flare-up of diplomatic fury from Niamey, you completely underestimated the ironclad, highly coordinated brotherhood of the AES. Because just yesterday, the official administrative notices dropped like clockworks. Burkina Faso and Mali stepped right up to the plate and handed in their former instruments of exit. They have officially submitted their letters of farewell, bidding a permanent adieu to the Rome Statute and declaring to the global audience that the Sahel is entirely finished playing characters in a rigged judicial theater. Welcome back to Power and Pulse, to our absolute frontline family of ride or die subscribers. Thank you for standing completely unyielding with us in these digital trenches. Your presence, your likes, and your share energy are the literal shields keeping independent, human-driven African perspective alive and kicking against a corporate media mechanism designed to muzzle the truth. So let's cut through the polished diplomatic jargon. This joint exit isn't just an administrative procedure or a minor spat over legal paperwork, right? This is a thunderous structural declaration of total legal autonomy. Burkina Faso, Mali, and Niger have looked at the global chessboard and decided to completely dismantle the judicial chains that have been used to stalk, hunt, and micromanage independent African leadership for decades. The Western establishment is an absolute state of collective shock because they never envisioned a day where these three desert nations will systematically coordinate a total exit from the neo-colonial court system. Okay, let's dissect the raw, undisputed facts here, because the core motive behind this grand Sahelian exit is entirely uniform across three capitals. So, for the first part, okay, 28 years, the International Court has functioned not as an instrument of universal human morality, right, but as a highly calculated, deeply biased system of selective justice. Let's look at the entire track record since the inception of the Rome Statute, okay? They have spent billions and billions of dollars, employed thousands of Western bureaucrats, and built an absolute fortress in the Netherlands, and who have spent nearly 3 decades chasing down, indicting, and throwing into prison cells almost exclusively African leaders, African military commanders, and individuals from nations they know can never buy back. I mean, you have to appreciate the absolute unmitigated hypocrisy of this setup, okay? The court was explicitly designed to go after those who don't have the military or economic weight to challenge the global hierarchy. It's an international legal club where the rules are selectively written, selectively applied, and selectively enforced. So, if you are a tiny compliant country willing to hand over your natural resources to the metropolitan centers on a silver platter, you will never see an indictment. Okay, so your local governance could be completely disastrous, but you will remain a darling of the international law. But the very second an African nation decides to claim absolute custody of its own domestic affairs, the moment a nation chooses to nationalize its wealth and secure its own geographic perimeters without asking for foreign permission, the administrative gears of The Hague suddenly begins to churn. Okay, so it is a brilliant, highly sophisticated mechanism of remote control intimidation, and the leaders of the AES have officially stepped out of that target zone. If you want to see the absolute pinnacle of this double standard, you don't need some secret intelligence leak. You just need to open your eyes and look at what is actively happening on the global stage right now. Take a long hard at Gaza, okay? A literal live-streamed humanitarian catastrophe has unfolded before the entire civilized world, and an entire territory has been completely crushed. Structural infrastructure turned into ash. Civilian lives obliterated by the tens of thousands, and an entire population subjected to unmitigated structural destruction. The global community is shouting from the rooftops. The evidence is piled high to the heavens. Yet, what has that tribunal done? They are still sitting around in their comfortable air-conditioned chambers in Europe, dragging their feet, holding endless bureaucratic debates, and failing to comprehensively persecute the primary political figure behind that carnage. I don't even want to pollute my mouth by uttering the man's name on this platform tonight. Yet, while they suffer from absolute localized blindness regarding the immense atrocities happening in the Middle East, look at their frantic activities when it comes to the Sahel. Every single day, without fail, you can tune into the European Union Parliament and witness them passing urgent, dramatic resolutions against Niger. The next afternoon, they are gathered in a frenzy, passing severe resolutions against Burkina Faso. And mark my words, tomorrow morning, you will hear about another high-level resolution being passed against Mali. It is an extraordinary display of cognitive dissonance. They are straining their eyes to see the things that are literally not happening in Mali, Niger, and Burkina Faso, inventing narratives of instability out of thin air to justify their administrative interference. But when it comes to the concrete, undeniable horrors that the entire world is screaming about in Gaza, the European Parliament suddenly suffers from collective synchronized blindness. They don't see that one at all. Their moral compass magically breaks down the second the perpetrators belongs to their own geopolitical inner circle, okay? So do you see the grand scheme now? Do you see exactly why the AES leaders have collectively decided that they are entirely finished with this neo-colonial court system? Let's map out the tactical sequence of how this global trap actually operates. Have you ever, in the entire history of modern international law, heard of these guys prosecuting a single European leader? Have you? Well, have you ever witnessed them issuing an arrest warrant for a North American president or prime minister despite the decades of illegal invasions, regime change operations, and economic blockades that have shattered entire regions across the global south? Have you? Of course not. Have you seen them actively chasing down and hunting that political figure in Israel with the same rabid, relentless intensity that they use to hunt down independent African statesmen who haven't committed a single crime against humanity? The grand crime of the AES leaders isn't that they violated international law. Their crime is that they possess the audacity to disconnect the umbilical cord of colonial exploitation. Their real offense in the eyes of Brussels and Paris is that they have permanently severed ties with the old masters and completely dedicated their lives, their governance, and their state wealth, making life measurably better for their own domestic citizens. And because they can no longer use direct military force to stop this Sahelian revolution without triggering a massive regional firestorm, they are utilizing their backup administrative playbook. The plan is beautiful in its simplicity, right? First, the European Union Parliament manufactures a series of highly dramatic, completely unverified resolutions condemning the AES administrations. Then those resolutions are passed down to the hallway to the ICC bureaucrats to create the illusions of universal global outrage. Next, the court steps in to declare a formal judicial witch hunt, issuing international arrest warrants against our 3 Sahelian lions. And then boom! The moment any of these leaders stepped onto international soil for a diplomatic summit, they attempt to catch them, nail them, lock them away in a European cell, and instantly throw the Sahel region back into a state of leaderless chaos so they can quietly reclaim absolute unchecked control over our mineral wealth. It is a highly sophisticated, clean-handed method of executing a modern coup d'etat under the guise of international law. But this time around, the old colonial directors completely miscalculated the caliber of the men they are dealing with. Huge kudos, maximum respect, and absolute honor to the 3 lions we have steering the ship in the AES region: General Abdourahamane Tchiani, Captain Ibrahim Traoré, and Colonel Assimi Goïta. These men aren't your typical old school African politicians who tremble in the fear the moment a Western ambassador frowns or mentions the word sanctions. These are battle-hardened, intellectually conscientized tactical officers who understand the deep architecture of global power dynamics. By systematically coordinating this synchronized exit from the ICC, they have effectively castrated the primary legal weapon that the West intended to use to derail this movement for complete regional autonomy. They have looked the entire European establishment square in the eye and boldly declare your judicial jurisdiction stops completely at our geographical perimeters. You have absolutely no moral or legal authority to judge how we defend our ancestral lands or govern our societies. Honestly, you have to find some humor in the absolute panic currently rippling through the legal boardrooms in The Hague. Okay, so for decades, right, they took immense delight in treating African nations like permanent clients of their court, using the threat of indictment to keep regional leaders completely compliant and docile. They expected these 3 nations to beg for dialogue, to offer diplomatic compromises, or to send delegations of expensive lawyers to argue their case before a rigged panel. Instead, the AES leaders didn't even bother to argue. They just signed the administrative papers, leaked the envelopes, sent them via registered mail to the United Nations, and walked right back to the task of securing their borders. That is the ultimate geopolitical power move. What the Western managers fail to comprehend is that the Sahel region has permanently crossed its political Rubicon. Okay, so the old matrix of a psychological submission has been completely incinerated by a profound, unstoppable wave of mass consciousness. The populace is completely unified behind this decision. They understand that true domestic self-determination cannot exist as long as an external court in Europe retains the unilateral right to determine who can or cannot lead an African country. The populations of the AES have officially outgrown the fear of Western institutional labels. You can call our leaders whatever names you want in your parliaments. Our streets call them liberators, okay? This is precisely why all the desperate media campaigns, the highly coordinated human rights reports, and the endless strings of critical articles flooding the Western press are failing to alter the momentum on the ground. Okay, the old tricks are simply no longer working. The populations have been thoroughly immunized against the standard propaganda framework. So when you pass a revolution against Niger in the Brussels today, the ordinary person in the street doesn't get scared. They simply laugh. Okay, share this clip as a meme on TikTok and double down on their support for the National Defense Forces. The psychological strings have been completely cut, and once a people have broken free from mental captivity, there is absolutely no amount of legal theater that can ever drag them back into submission. So by walking away from the Rome Statute, the Alliance of Sahel States is doing something infinitely more profound than merely dodging bias indictments. They are actively paving the way for the creation of native, authentic, and genuinely impartial justice mechanisms within the continent itself. So why should an African citizen have to look across an ocean to a European city to find justice or accountability? The AES is already actively laying the conceptual foundations for an independent Sahel criminal court, a judicial body designed by African minds, rooted in African realities, and engineered to protect the lives and rights of our people without a single drop of paternalistic foreign oversight. So this is the ultimate realization of the uncomprehensive self-reliance. We are building our own defense networks. We are managing our own economic resources. We are forging our own global partnerships with non-Western powers who respect our borders, and we are now establishing our own supreme legal architectures. So to those silent partners, those hidden corporate directors, and those desperate European parliamentarians who think they can still use the ICC to spark an international crisis within the Sahel, we have a very clear, unambiguous message for you tonight. You can take all your elaborate legal briefs, you can take your manufactured resolutions, and you can take your selective arrest warrants, and you can channel that institutional energy absolutely anywhere else. Because right here in the Sahel, you are wasting your bureaucratic time. So the three lions of the AES are completely locked in. The conscious streets are standing immovably behind them, and the march towards total uncompromised global dignity is officially unstoppable. So the historic legal exit unfolding across Mali, Burkina Faso, and Niger isn't just an administrative news story. It is an absolute blueprint for the total liberation of the global South. The era where our leaders had to look to Europe for legal validation is permanently over. The Sahel has officially cleared the runway, shattered the institutional traps, and is currently charting an independent flight path toward a future built on absolute self-ownership and uncompromised dignity. This is Power and Pulse. I am your host, Marie, and I will see you all in the next one.